I've got the clouds scrolling across the sky. I'm happy with that. The next thing to do is to create the ducks. Now I want the ducks to flap across the screen, so I'm going to use some animation to do that. Now if I look in the images folder, I've got ducks images that I imported in the assets. And we've got 3 images here. One is with the duck wings down, the next one is the duck wings up, and the third one is the duck plummeting to the ground. So I want to animate the duck so that the wings appear to flap up and down. So the first thing I need to do is to split up those images. So I'm going to change the sprite mode to multiple and apply those changes. Now I can open up the sprite editor. So here are my ducks in the sprite editor. I need to slice them, and I'm going to use an automatic slice this time. Slice that, and we should see now that, yeah, if I click on the ducks, they've all got slices. Now to avoid any sort of bobbing up and down with these 2 images, I need to make sure that the cells are exactly the same size. Right, so this one, we've got, this one is 76 tall, 148 wide. And this one is 148 wide, but 70 tall. So I'm going to change that to 76, so the 2 are the same size. Right, the problem now is that it's measured it from the bottom, and I actually aligned it from the top. So I just need to align the tops the same. So that's the Y value, 85 here, and 890 there. So I'll make that 85 as well. Okay. This one is fine. I don't need to do anything about that at all. Right, so I'm going to apply that and close the sprite editor, and we should see now that we've got 3 images: wings down, wings up, and falling. Right, it's time to start animating. So I'm going to create a new folder here in the assets. So click there, folder, and I'm going to call this animations. Okay, so that's where we're going to stick all our animations. Now the first thing to do is I'm going to drag just this first duck onto the window. Right, and we can't see it, and the reason being it's on the default layer, so I need to create a new sorting layer for that. So create a new one. I'll call this one ducks. Okay, so it's below background, so anything on the ducks layer will appear in front of the background. Okay, let's go back to this ducks, and I'll put it on the ducks layer, and now we can see it. Okay, it happens to be right underneath the camera, or right on top of the camera. I'll just move it out for convenience sake. Right, so we've got 1 image. I need now to animate it. Before I create the animation, I'm just going to rename this as duck. Okay. Right, a number of ways of creating animations. My favorite method is to go to the window menu, and then you find an animation option, and we choose animation. And it tells me to begin animating duck, create an animation and an animation clip. So I can just create that. And here we are. We're in the animations folder. And the first one I'm going to do is the duck flying across the sky. So I'm going to call this one flying. Right. Now, the animation panel has got a timeline here in seconds. So this would be a 10th of a second, a 20th of a second, a 30th, and so on. And here's the the position, and as you'd expect, it's at 0. So I'm going back to my images here. I'm going to drag the ducks 0 onto the timeline. Right, and you can see these blue diamonds. Right, they are keyframes. If I want to see what I've got on the screen, I can open this up and now I can see the picture of the duck with its wings down. I'm going to move the position onto frame 10, and I'll drag ducks 1 in there. So just put its nose against there, so we've got that. So this means that the first image will be on for 1/10 of a second. I want the second image then to be on for 1/10 of a second and for it to cycle. So I want it to go up as far as 0.2 of a second. So if I go up to 0.2, I don't want to change the image, so I'm just going to put in a blank keyframe. So we've got here add keyframe, and we can test that out. So we can run it, and as you can see, the duck is flapping quite nicely there. Okay. If you wanted it to go faster or slower, you just spread out these keyframes. So if I wanted to make it go much faster, I could move that one there. And now it should work twice as fast. There it goes. I like it a bit slower than that, so I'm going to reverse it and bring it back to 20. Okay, so that's the flying animation. Now the duck, when it's shot, will create another animation. So I'm going to create a new one. So just clicking on the drop down here, create new clip. Animations folder again. I'll call this one falling. Right, and to this one I'm going to add the ducks 2 sprite. Right, and there's nothing else there. It's a dead duck, so there it is, falling. Okay, there's no other animation to that, so I can close it. Right, so we've got 2 animations here, and we need to control them using something called an animator. So if I go back to the animations folder, you'll see you've got the falling, I've got the flying, and I've also got this duck thing with a different symbol. That is the animator. And if I double click on that, this shows the animator window. It seems to have docked in with the scene, so I'm quite happy with that. Now, this is known as a state engine. So what happens when the game begins, or when this object is created, that's its entry, it's going to be flying, which is fine. So flying is the default state. However, when it's shot, it's going to switch to falling. So I'm going to do that by right-clicking on the flying state, and then it gives up this little menu. I'm going to make a transition. So I've got this little arrow. I'm just going to drag it to the falling and click. Now, when is it going to switch from flying to falling? Well, when it's dead. So I'm going to need to add in a parameter for that. Okay. So I've got a parameter list which is empty. I'll click on plus, and I can choose a number of parameters. These are numbers. I can have a number, or an integer number, or I can have a trigger or a boolean. I'm going to choose a boolean, this one. Remember, booleans can either be true or false. Right, I'm going to call this dead. It's not going to be dead at first, but if it becomes dead, then it's going to start falling. So if I just click on this transition here and look at the inspector, when do we go from flying to falling? Well, we do that if conditions here, I'll add to the conditions, if dead is true. Okay. So if I go back to the scene and just run it. Okay, there's the duck flying. The next thing we need to do is make it fly across the screen, of course.